Is your goal to get an athletic scholarship? Do you see yourself playing at the professional ranks one day? Do you envision getting a gold medal at the next Olympics? Well, to do that requires an everyday commitment. You have to have an edge. And that's what I'm talking to you about today, gaining your edge. Check out my course, The Edge. This is going to give you all the principles and social dynamics to guide you to success. Check out my course, The Edge. The link is on the homepage of sportsmastery.com. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. We're walking into 2020. Got big things coming down the pipeline. Great students coming on the show. We're going to talk about some things. I think we're taking a look deep into the future. I love working with the young folks that's working on their doctorate because I feel like they might be the new opportunity to create a new invention to get on the same page with athletes. Maybe y'all create something, man, that the coach and the athlete has these electrodes on, they make eye contact, and they can both see the same play, and it should happen just like the coach drew it up, and they run it just as expected. I think we might be on to something. So you got to figure that part out for us football coaches. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I have Alex Cantillo coming on the show today. He's working on his doctorate at John F. Kennedy University in the Bay Area. Did I say that right, Alex?
Yes, you did. And Alex Cantillo, future PsyD, John F. Kennedy, working on my dual degree in both clinical and sports psychology. So I'm excited to be on the show, excited to be talking with you guys about a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. And like you said, I think this is the future where services and sports are headed.
So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get right into it. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the need for mental health services in sport. In some of those bullet points, we'll cover the prevalence of clinical issues in sport, how the current structure of sport influences the need for services on all levels. And as we get into the third quarter, we'll discuss social perspective and expectations of the athlete. And finally, we'll close out and we'll have a discussion centered around how can we best service athletes at all levels. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring Alex Cantillo onto the show. Alex, I know you're really passionate about this topic. We've had several conversations there. We could have went either way on today's episode, but we wanted to start here. Why is this important to you?
So the reason why this is so important to me is because when we think of athletes, we think of them all having like this persona of like you were talking about at the beginning, like heroes, people who wear this armor, who go out and fight on the battlefield of our sports, even from a young age to when they go up to elite. That's what they're looked at. They're looked upon as athletes. They're looked at upon as warriors, fighters in the arena. And to me, the way I conceive it and the way I've conceptualized it as I've grown within my training is that we kind of forget about who the athlete is as a person. Their identity gets so enveloped in who they are as performers that what goes on in their lives outside of the boundaries of play sometimes can get neglected. So for me, that's why it's so important that we try to advocate for athletes who are sacrificing so much in terms of time, personal care, in terms of experiences in life to be the best version of themselves on the field of play. And that comes with consequences. So we need to have services available. We need to be present for them to be able to discuss that and to kind of mediate all those factors that influence their experience.
Right, because we've heard of the term hero worship, and athletes are probably at the pinnacle of that, with the media
Big
exposure that the athletes get, whether it's in high school, college, or professional. In whatever community they're in, there's always going to be media. So when you consider hero worship and the need for mental health services in sport, we often come across athletes that have anxiety disorders. Mm-hmm. They might be a little bipolar, where you see depression from time to time, and then the next day they're up. And then this is a new one, eating disorders with the male athlete. So this is definitely new. So talk to us about the prevalence of clinical issues in sport that sports parents might not even realize this. Young coaches might not even see this as a clinical issue, or even veteran coaches.
You know what's crazy? I was able to come across a really good quote from Brian Hainline, who's the chief medical officer in the NCAA, and he writes that mental health isn't apart from, but rather a part of athletic health. I think that when we see detriments in performance, we automatically immediately run to the performance issue. It's like we kind of shy away from understanding more of the mental health or just the personal aspects of things. But when we're talking about sports participation, like, athletes aren't immune from any kind of mental health condition or any kind of mental health circumstance. We put that visor up, or we put like that those blinds up because of hero worship. Whereas when you look at some of the research, and like the NCAA did a study where they found that 30% of their athletes and we're talking about like thousands upon thousands of athletes, and that's still 1% of the population, 2% of the athletic population. 30% of those athletes reported depression over the course of a year, right? And then when we look at some of the youth athletes, 1 in 3 adolescents report symptoms of an anxiety disorder. Some of them are affected by behavior disorders, as well as mood disorders like bipolar and depression. There's 11.4 adolescents who start, misusing substances as a result of sport, whether it be to pain medication or just, other forms of substance use in order to ameliorate, whether it be the stress from sport or the pain associated with it. So, and then when we go on to elite, like, there's some other real eye-popping numbers when we look at some of the studies that the British Journal of Sports Medicine has conducted. They looked at over between 3,000 to 6,000 athletes and have found that 34% suffer from anxiety, 34% also suffer from depression. The eating disorders has been a prevalent issue. And then we're talking about also like panic disorder, high stress levels. And it makes you question, like, with all the things that these athletes got going on, all the positive things, the way we look at them, like, oh, y'all are living the dream, playing a sport. How are these numbers still so prevalent? And it makes you consider the overall way that sport is structured, some of the ways that we just kind of focus on the athlete of who they are in terms of performance, neglecting their other personal needs. And that's what strikes me as most pressing, because we're still dealing with human beings. And oftentimes that gets forgotten.
Yeah, it almost makes you think of, even though it's called hero worship, there's still a piece of objectification in there.
Absolutely.
Of the athlete and the person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then they might not even realize that.
They might be objectifying themselves just because of the idea of, oh, I'm an athlete, I got to be strong, I'm impervious, I can't be vulnerable. I think that one of the issues in sport, and we're going to get into a little bit later, is just that this culture of just, you got to be strong, you got to be tough, rough it out, grind it out. And trust me, like, I've lived by that my whole life. And I'm sure that you being a coach, I've caught yourself like, oh, we got to grind this out, using those phrases. And I think that's part of the experience, but also part of the problem. Because I think that creates this sense of, I can't be weak, or I can't disclose what's going on with me for real. And then imagine all that building up over time.
Yeah, when you consider like these social and familial dynamics, whether the mom and dad are in the fights, or the mom and dad going through a divorce is quite stressful, figuring out who's going to live where and when, or if it's split custody, things physically going on at home. When you consider the female athlete, so it gets really, you have to really be sharp as a coach. You have to be intuitive. You have to be able to read body language. You got to understand baseline behaviors of your athletes. So then when their attitude or the way they talk or their consistency changes, you can be right on that without guessing to figure out what's going on. So we discussed that what's also adding to this problem in terms of the need for mental health services in sport is like the current structure of sport and how it influences the need for services on all levels. And we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry when you think about the big three: football, baseball, basketball, So let's speak to this, Alex.
So when we talk about like just the overall money, money is one of the biggest influencers. And I think that what's creating this need for for mental health services, because like even though the sports are growing in such popularity, I think that puts a lot more pressure for athletes to perform and just for putting out the best quality product possible, right? So it's creating this atmosphere of like, what can you do for me at this moment in time when we think about athletes? And the athletes obviously that sustain with good health, that are able to persevere through resiliency and have those high-end level mental skills, are able to, you know, last and endure. However, that's such a small percentage where at any given moment in time, one mess up, one career ending injury, anything, you know, a personal problem that debilitates your progression or your sense of training or your overall just kind of well-being at that time could derail your athletic experience as a whole. And I'm not talking about just elite. Also, we're talking about kids too. You know, like you said, there could be kids from different areas who are exposed to traumatic violence on a consistent basis, who then have to deal with their parents who are fighting all the time, stress levels at school, and then expected to go out and perform. And even though they got natural talent, all the combinations of those stressors in you know, are going to impact their performance and not allow them to really manifest into the highest potential possible. So that's going to immediately create a sense of like, okay, like I'm still giving it all I got, but now what? You know, that's going to bring into question issues of identity, you know, balancing all those challenges, the kind of cues that they're receiving from their environment. What does this tell me about my worth? If I'm really this good, but I can't make it this far, so who am I as a person? It brings a lot into question. And I think that one of the biggest drivers, like we've been saying, is money, because money puts that pressure. Money wants that product. Money wants to put out something that's good so people can see it and people will be like, all right, these people can perform. Okay, this is a good product. I'm enjoying the sport. It's an entertainment business, is what it is at the end of the day. And we kind of objectify our athletes to be those entertainers.
That's correct.
You know, and it's and that kills me. That drives me, because it's like, there again, we're all human beings, whether you're an entertainer, whether you're a podcast person, whether you're a teacher.
Correct.
You know, everyone's a human being with their own feelings, their own emotions, their own thoughts, their own struggles, you know, their own grinds. And just because of the value that you put in one aspect of your identity doesn't objectify you to that one thing, and that doesn't mean you neglect other aspects of that person's life. So this entertainment market, I think, is really driving that neglect. So, you know, it's just
I really agree with that, because you can see the problems, and just this conversation, you know, we're coming up with some solutions, because me and a friend of mine, we've been discussing this for the last couple of years now, how sport really is entertainment. When you look at what's going on at the professional level and even the collegiate level, it's entertainment. The guys are actors. The sport is still there a little bit, but if you're a young person, you have to realize people are coming to watch you to be entertained.
And
you know,
and not
whether
only that,
you win or lose.
absolutely, I agree 1000%. And not only that, Deshaun, like let's put you in the athlete role where you're making millions of dollars per year, right? But you're going through a strong battle with depression. Let's say you're like Michael Phelps, Ricky Williams, and Serena Williams, all who've reported depression, right? Pick a sport. What sport do you want, Deshaun?
We'll go with football.
All right, so let's say you just won a Super Bowl. You're the MVP of the Super Bowl. You had set a record, 10 catches for 215 yards, Super Bowl record, whatever, right? You're MVP. You're at the highest peak, but you've still been battling depression, right? People within this industry, you know, seeing you reach that pinnacle, seeing you making millions of dollars in the spotlight, they you know what their reaction, and I hear it consistently when I'm trying to talk about this topic with everybody, is like, what do these guys have to complain about?
Right.
What do these athletes, what does she have to complain about? Why is Serena Williams suffering from depression? She's the best in the world, you know?
They always had all that money. They got all that money.
They got all that money.
About?
So this is part of the problem. That multi-billion-dollar business is like, oh, like if money is the root of all happiness. So then now, because athletes are getting paid, because it's an entertainment business, y'all can't complain. You guys have no right. You guys have no reason to complain, because you guys are in a great place. I would, something that I hear is, I would give anything to be in their shoes. Okay, so where you're gonna live in the spotlight of pressure, of criticism, of being broken down for any potential failure that you may have, for any letdown in the eyes of the public, right? And then you're going to have to consistently go on the grind, sacrifice personal aspects of yourself. The list goes on and on.
That's right.
Are individuals willing to do that? I don't think they understand the demands and the balance that go into being an athlete, whether
No,
at
they
an
don't.
amateur level or the elite. And that's what's creating a big misunderstanding and just that gap, I think, in the need for mental health, even though it's starting to alter, because we've had athletes like Amanda Beard, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, all come out openly. Ronda Rousey has discussed her issues with her experience with suicide and contemplating it after those two big losses that she had.
Right.
So we have some big name athletes that have come out openly and are starting to get this conversation rolling to the point where organizations are getting the ball rolling on providing more services. However, it's still lacking because of the social structure, because of the factors that exist within our society, both within sport and those who watch it.
Yeah. So when you speak to that, where do you think we fit in at all of this, as far as being problem solvers or helping the young person?
So, when I see where we fit in, honestly, we have to be educators, agents of change. We have to we have to be conversation starters first and foremost. I think that a lot of people, especially when you think about sports psychology in its traditional sense, sports psychology really emphasizes the performance side. And how I've seen it through my education so far, and at least this is the vibe. It may not be this way, and some of my professors will argue. However, what the sense that I get is like, and this is kind of like what you hear people in the field talk about too, is like, oh, you got a clinical issue? Boom, we're gonna refer you out.
Right.
So it's like there's like this hesitancy. It's like, why not at least begin to explore that? Why not start having the conversations? Why wait another couple days or another week or another month until this person can see a licensed professional? Everyone should be trained, whether you're a coach, whether you're a mental skills consultant, whether you're a psychologist, whether you're an athletic trainer. Everyone has to have some kind of exposure to what the symptoms of mental health are.
Yes.
What are some of the interventions that can be implemented on a basic level? Not that you have to have a full comprehensive therapy session. What are the small things that you can kind of talk to the athlete about in those moment-to-moment sessions where they might appear in distress, or where you notice that they're having certain challenges in their lives? Equipping them to be better recognizers, right? And I think just also working with the athletes, maybe doing workshops, going into the communities, going into organizations, and offering skills for them to self-manage, to be able to deal with mental health challenges as they arise as well, because it's got to be a very proactive approach. I think that with mental health, especially in the sporting arena, we're kind of reactive at this point. It's like we have these professionals and like, oh, you have depression? Okay, like we're going to get you to this professional. We have services now, right? No, let's take it a step further. Let's plan. Let's prepare, and then have the professionals do all the comprehensive service that is needed to maintain a good culture of safety, a good culture of acceptance, a culture of priority that's athlete-centered, for making them feel like, hey, I don't have a problem. I'm experiencing something. I'm experiencing a challenge. It's not a problem. I'm not crazy. That's how we break down stigma, by breaking down this whole idea of like, oh, you have a mental health challenge. Oh, then you must be this crazy person, or oh, I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to. No, you invite the conversation, you sit through it, you accept it unconditionally, and then you work through them in a very unconditional way that's going to allow them to feel like, hey, I'm cared for, And I think as coaches on the forefront, man, like coaches are like, being a former coach myself, I would always do check-ins with my boys when I was coaching football, man. It was always important to me because I know that struggle, being an academic student athlete myself, having my parents have gone through divorce, and like I know there's things that go on in the community, whether it be gang violence, whether it be just relationship stuff when you're a teen, just all that school stuff. I always made it a point to check in because I know that life can get in the way, and it's like looking at the athlete as a human being first.
Yeah, because You get into sport and that hero worship, it starts early. The objectification part, it starts early. And then you start living like that, and you have to uphold like this fictitious image, to your friends, your family, other peers, and, folks in your community. So I can see that becoming an issue in itself. And then when a kid or student athlete starts to unravel, a coach doesn't have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
They're quick to say, like you said, okay, we have a clinical thing, but we often talk about this. The sport can take something out of your soul if you don't know how to, if you don't have the right people in your corner, and then it becomes a spiritual battle to keep going. And some of these kids and some of these coaches and programs have just like beat the life spirit out of kids, let alone the spirit of sports. But they're playing because there's that pressure. It could be that family pressure or that peer pressure to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't want to let mom and dad down. I don't want to let my wife down. I don't want to let my girlfriend down.
And everything that you're speaking on, hints at potential identity crisis, which is for me a huge. We've actually had conversations about this, and I'm actually hoping to incorporate this in my lifelong work. The development of athletic identity. I think that the athletic identity is such a powerful thing because for so many of us who play sports, you can live your whole life thinking you're an athlete, living each day like an athlete. It's hard for that to go away. So imagine when you're being thrusted into that role from such a young age, your identity becomes that, and anything that tries to stray you away from it can cause distress. Or if you in any way, like to use your word, unravel, that doesn't allow you to, fulfill the expectations of what that athletic identity was construed to be for you. Think about depression, think about anxiety. Can you imagine just a consistent worry? Am I going to live up to the expectations that my parents have today for me? Am I going to live up to the expectations of my coach has, for me this season as an All-American athlete? Am I going to let the community down if I don't bring the state championship? Am I going to if I going to misrepresent my school if I don't win this national title in wrestling, or in golf, or I'm the best track runner in the state. However, I don't like track. Like, can you imagine an experience like that? Is like, I've been doing this just because my parents have been putting me in this position. Is like, that dissonance can cause so many
happens all the time.
Yeah. I actually, my cousin was an all-state pitcher, man, here in Florida. And my dude would throw a 95 miles an hour fastball coming out of high school. And it reached a point where he was doing that since he was like 4. And my dude like did not want to play anymore. He got into college and hated it. It's like, I can imagine a trajectory for any athlete like that, like being pushed into that role, being pushed to develop this identity of a person that you might not want to be. And there's just an array of that. So not only do you have the issues of and the pressures from the entertainment and the money side of things, you also have the internal struggle that a lot of these athletes endure, because the grind and the burnout of having this athletic identity for so long may just thrust them into an array of challenges.
As we get into the fourth quarter, I wanted to ask you, how can we best service athletes, whether we're sport coaches, strength coaches, personal trainer, middle school, high school, collegiate coaches, professional coaches, you're a counselor, you're a doctor, from a collective standpoint? What do we need to do individually to maybe see problems before they occur, or see it at catching something at the beginning, or just in general? How can we best service at all levels?
Well, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you the first. I'm going to give you the first answer, which for me is kind of like understanding, because this is what clinical sports psychology is all about. So when you talk about clinical sports psychology, is understanding the feedback and the loop of how performance influences overall holistic well-being, and how holistic well-being influences performance. So in many senses, when a performance issue arises, we're quick to just say, oh, it's a motivation issue, it's a focus issue, it's a confidence issue. And, those are all performance aspects. Typically, though, and with my conversations with a few professionals in the field, a lot of performance issues have an underlying, whether it be clinical or subclinical challenge that's influencing that performance detriment. So being able to first understand that, involvement in athletic performance as well as involvement in personal and psychological well-being can inversely influence one another, or not inversely, simultaneously influence one another concurrently. Pick your word.
I got you. I
you know
understand.
that's a big piece of it. So not just like pinpointing, oh, this person has a clinical issue, or no, oh, this person has a performance issue. It's kind of understanding the dynamic that exists between between that loop, that feedback that both aspects of the athlete's life has. And then just as far as the individual piece, I think just some key points is being proactive. So don't wait till you notice something. Be constantly on alert. I think educating yourselves on the symptoms of certain mental health conditions, certain behavior manifestations, physical manifestations, symptoms, such as for anxiety, for instance. If you hear someone saying that I've got very fast heart rate, or I'm sweating more than I used to, or sweating more than I'm used to. What else? That I'm feeling really tense. Things like that. Those are small things that can be done. I think that also, like I was mentioning earlier, that athlete-centered focus, I think just showing that, hey, like, I'm interested in you as a person. How are you doing? Asking some simple questions to engage them as a person first, before practice, after practice. Hey, how's school? How's that situation going on at home? I know you've been going through a rough time. And engaging them as people, I think, is going to make a profound difference. And then when they open up and discuss the challenges that they're having, I think that's something that everyone can do. And this is going to help break down the stigma across society, I believe. Is just being a good listener. And with not necessarily saying, not undermining their problem, saying, oh, no, that can't be it.
Right.
You're always so happy all the time. Or no, like, you're so confident. How can you be dealing with this? You always got a smile on your face. Because everybody's fighting an internal battle. I think that if we just take a step back, hold our comments, listen, and reflect what we're listening to them, to the athlete who's coming and being vulnerable, taking that risk to open up about their challenges, that's how you break down stigma. That's the heart of breaking down these negative views of seeking mental health service. Because if we come at them with all our comments that we might have right off the rip, that we might just have those instinctual reactions like, oh, no way, nah, you're not that type of person. We undermine their experience, and they'll never seek help again, or at least their chances will lessen. So I think that those are the main points that we all, whether it be coaches, athletic trainers, or just, mental health professionals too, can utilize. And I think the last piece too is involving as many people as you can, because a lot of clinical issues, a lot of performance issues might have physiological starting points. So for instance, I know that sleep deprivation can cause a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, issues with cognitive performance. So understanding those things, and maybe like a poor diet also can manifest
Exactly.
a lot of things. So an interdisciplinary team where a lot of people are in communication, or like you can relay and be like, but again, this goes back to one of the previous points, being able to recognize what's going on, so that way you can relay it to another professional and you guys get feedback. So I think just like being involved with as many professionals as possible who have knowledge of different areas can really facilitate overall well-being. So when we say, for me, mental health encompasses just an overall holistic well-being. So, and that's why I think it's important to have a strong multidisciplinary team available, or at least a network of multidisciplinary professionals to consult with.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we've been listening to Alex Cantillo, John F. Kennedy University. What were some of the degrees you were going after?
Well, I got my master's in mental health. I'm getting my sports psych degree, my clinical psych degree with a concentration in integrated care and neuropsych. So I'm going after the whole 9 yards, man.
Yeah, you got to get it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the theme of the day. You have to go out there and get it. He talked about listening. Listen to this episode again. There's a lot of nuggets in here. There's a lot of dynamic nuggets in here. You might have to listen to this 3 or 4 times, but I feel like we're on the edge of something. You guys will be seeing Alex, Mr. Cantillo, come on again. So go ahead and enjoy this episode and stay tuned.